Hey folks, Jackdaw here. In previous videos, I've covered a lot about selecting your Rook's particular faction, as well as the specific details on how we can shape our own Rook to our liking. But now it is time to focus on a huge key decision, choosing your class. With 3 core options, Warrior, Mage and Rogue, each class in the Veilguard brings its own flair, combat style and brand new specialisations that will shape your adventure in many thrilling ways. And unlike other RPGs, what sets Dragon Age's classes apart is that they always have a strong connection to the story. So today we're going to dive into each class, their key differences, their specialisations and so much more to help you find the best fit for your Rook. And right from the start, we need to touch upon the fact that the Veilguard now shifts its combat a lot more towards action RPG gameplay rather than what we saw in Origins and in Inquisition with its strategy-focused combat. Warrior, Mage and Rogues return, but with significant changes. Each class now features 2 distinct weapon types, a variety of abilities, and Rook-exclusive specializations that are going to dramatically affect your combat role. But unlike previous Dragon Age games, the Veilguard does away with its isometric tactics system, as well as taking away direct control over companions. Instead, you are going to use a companion ability wheel to manage their actions, a system reminiscent of Mass Effect. Additionally, the party size has been reduced from 4 members to now 3. On the class side, there is only one notable restriction, and that is one that has been in all games. For lore reasons, dwarves cannot be mages. Even though in the Veilguard, Harding now has some kind of magical powers despite being a dwarf, but no, as it stands, dwarven rooks cannot be mages. Despite that one restriction, you are free to mix and match your class, race and the new faction system. For example, you can indeed play as a mage who is an Antivan Crow, you can be a dwarf who is a Morn Watcher, etc. Your class will affect your dialogue options as well. In my opinion, this is probably going to be most noticeable when playing as an Elven Mage, just given the narrative scale of the game. Okay, that is enough of an overview. Let's crack on and break down each class, starting with Warriors. In the Veilguard, the Warrior is the team's backbone, full-on tank or DPS. They of course excel in physical combat, whether they're standing firm in close quarter battles with a sword and shield, or unleashing devastating power with a 2-handed weapon. With a sword and shield, you can balance defense and offense, absorbing damage, retaliating with precision, and even throwing your shield for that extra impact. On the other hand, 2-handed weapons allow you to deal massive damage and send enemies flying with overwhelming force. Regardless of which weapon you switch between, warriors are front-line fighters, capable of devastating up-close attacks. As you level up, warriors can specialize further between survival, abilities, and weapon skill trees, granting access to one particular specialization. Speccing into survival and ability skill trees will unlock Reaper, a master of death and decay, draining life from enemies with night blades and unleashing nightmarish powers. Speccing into weapons and abilities will unlock Slayer, an arsenal expert who leaps into combat wielding 2-handed weapons with pure ferocity. And speccing into survival and weapons will unlock the Champion, a defensive juggernaut summoning righteous fire to punish foes while shrugging off damage. As a specialization example, the Champion gains access to Warden's Fire, their ultimate ability that ignites enemies with searing strikes, ideal for taking down Darkspawn who are particularly weakened by fire. This just goes to show the Champion's specialization focusing on defense while also dishing out considerable damage. Now, warriors in the Veilguard excel with key unique combat features. For example, they have their own stagger meter, which builds up stagger on enemies through heavy attacks, making them vulnerable to powerful takedowns. They also generate rage from dealing and receiving damage, which then fuels their strongest abilities. Of course, your warrior is ideal for players who enjoy close combat, using strategic abilities and heavy hits to control enemies while managing the battlefield. Next up, we have your rogues. Of course, your agile fighters who use mobility, cunning, cunning and precision to deliver lethal strikes. Whether you prefer engaging in close combat with dual blades or attacking from a distance with a bow, rogues excel at exploiting enemy weaknesses. Now, dual blades offer speed and agility, perfect for delivering quick, lethal strikes up close and then parrying away to avoid those attacks. Meanwhile, a bow allows you to strike from afar with precision and then retreat into the shadows. Both weapon types essentially enable rogues to control the battlefield in their own glass cannon way. As you level up a rogue, they can specialize further between sustain, control, and burst skill trees, granting them access to one specialization. Specking into sustain and burst will unlock the duelist, a quick and nimble specialist dueling enemies with devastating melee blows, parry, dodge, and striking with precision. Specking into sustain and control will unlock the saboteur, a master of traps and explosives, capable of devastating entire groups of enemies with well-placed bombs. And specking into control and burst will unlock the Veil Ranger, a deadly sniper who infuses their arrows with magical power, allowing for long-range destruction. As a specialization example, a Veil Ranger can charge their arrows with magic, dealing devastating damage from afar, but you combine that with companion abilities to then set up a deadly combo that can take down the toughest of enemies before they even get close to you. How perfect. Now, the rogue's own unique combat mechanics include momentum, which they build up by dodging attacks or successfully parrying an attack, which then allows them to unleash their abilities faster. And rogues like the Saboteur can use explosive daggers and concussive barrages to disrupt groups of enemies and leave them vulnerable. Ultimately, one of the best things about rogues are how they excel at setting up combo attacks with their companions, exploiting enemy weaknesses for massive damage. So, if you love mobility, tactical precision, and outsmarting your enemies before they even get to hit you, the rogue is your go-to class. And of course, lastly and most excitedly, in a world where the veil is weakening, mages stand in the last line of defense, wielding ancient powers drawn from the fragile barrier between the physical realm and the Fade. With the ability to freeze, incinerate, or electrocute enemies, mages have full control over the elements, whether striking from a distance or now fighting in close quarters. New to the mix for mages in the Veilguard, they now use two types of weapons. Of course, you have your staff, which allows for long-range attacks, channeling raw magic to obliterate enemies from afar. But now, for those who prefer to get closer to the action, similar to the Knight Enchanter in Inquisition, we have the Orb and Dagger setup, which offers a blend of magical and melee strikes, perfect for an agile Spellblade style combat, but also for setting up their own combo effects. As you level up your mage, of course, you can specialize further between sustain, control, and burst skill trees, granting access to one specialization. Specking into sustain and control will unlock Deathcaller, a necromancer who drains life from enemies and casts deathly spells. Specking into burst and control will unlock Evoker, a master of the elements summoning fire, ice, and lightning to tear enemies apart, with Meteor and Frost Nova as examples of a few of their spells. And specking into sustain and burst will unlock the Spellblade, a close quarters combat mage infusing magic into melee attacks to unleash devastating combos. As a specialization example, as a Spellblade, you can build elemental stacks on an enemy with your orb and unleash them with a dagger strike for a massive burst of damage. Again, just to reiterate, mages have a lot more versatility in the Veilguard, kind of like adapting to any combat situation with their wide array of spells. Previously, rogues kind of bridged that gap between ranged and melee, but now mages are doing that also. It's kind of warriors that are just your full-on up-close playstyle. But even then, they now have a shield they can throw for that ranged element. And just like warrior and rogue having their own unique combat mechanics, mages excel with, of course, mana, which regenerates passively, fueling their powerful abilities, and you do need to use it wisely, as some spells can be devastating but equally costly, especially considering that the mage now has a shield to ward off melee attacks. However, that comes at the cost of manner. And lastly, mages can build up stacks of elemental magic on enemies, detonating them for devastating bursts of damage. So if you like to stay in control, manage elemental effects, unleash havoc with powerful spells, and now quite easily switch between long range and melee combat with a magical twist, the mage is perfect for you. And so across all classes, combat relies on a few core mechanics. Each class has access to light and heavy attacks, dodging, jumping, and ranged attacks. Staggering enemies by landing consecutive heavy attacks opens them up to devastating takedowns, and ranged attacks are essential for breaking down enemy shields. The ability wheel, as discussed briefly before, is key for controlling combat. While there is no isometric camera system, you can still pause the action and then assign companion actions, setting up devastating primer and detonator combos and targeting enemy weaknesses. Combining abilities across classes opens up new opportunities to devastate the battlefield. For example, a rogue can set up a trap and then have a mage detonate that trap with a fireball, or warriors can hold enemies in place while rogues flank for deadly backstabs. It's all about that synergy. And Solas's Lyrium dagger also plays a role in combat. When Rook somehow acquires it, the dagger can be customized with up to 3 runes, each providing unique functions and effects, such as Scorch for dealing extra damage. And going back to your specialization, the thing that's really going to make combat in my opinion, each of them have something brand new to Dragon Age, an ultimate ability, which is a game-changing ability that will absolutely turn the tide of battle. So as you play, each class has an ultimate meter that charges during combat, and once filled, you can unleash your devastating battlefield-wide effect. Whether it's the Warden's Fire for champions, or the Murder of Crows for duelists, or the Arcane Wrath for spellblades, each ultimate reflects your class and the specialization's theme and power. So whether you prefer being a necromancer, or an explosive rogue expert, or a defensive warrior hurling your shield at every kind of darkspawn, the game allows you to mix, match, and experiment with a variety of different builds. Skills can also be refunded at any time, encouraging us to try new strategies and explore each specialization's full potential. And with a maximum level of 50, endless skill trees, and hundreds of abilities, the Veilguard seemingly offers infinite ways to play and master each of our classes. So the question now lingers: which class are you gonna choose? Let me know in the comments down below if this video has been helpful in cementing your choice for your first Rook's playthrough. I'm gonna be playing as a Morn Watcher Slayer with a huge greatsword, as metal and epic as that sounds, combining that with Emric's necromantic abilities, as well as Nev's ice magic and slowing time abilities. What about you? I would love to know your thoughts down below. But of course, you're already in the right place for the latest on the Veilguard. I have been Jackdaw, and until the next one, I should go. Whoa, 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 whoa.